Hello, good morning or afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Welcome to the 53rd episode of the Accountants Success Secrets podcast. I'm Mark Lee, mentor, speaker and debunker.
And I'm Philippa Haynes of Insight 101, supporting you to stand out. Each week on the podcast, we showcase another accountant or bookkeeper who has been running their own practice for a good few years and who we think can inspire and encourage other accountants and bookkeepers in practice around the UK.
We ask them to share their stories, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. And if you'd like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with Philippa or me. We have one date in April. Otherwise, we're taking bookings now for late June.
We are indeed. So today we are delighted to introduce Adam Clegg, who describes himself as the bloke what started it, or who started Swift Accountancy in Ashford, Kent in 2020, which I suspect was great timing. Aged 19, he started work for his father. That's where it all began. He also ran his own accountancy practice, so it runs in the family. Adam went on to gain his ACCA qualification. He even gained a degree in accountancy for good measure. Adam then worked for a number of medium to large size firms, which allowed him to experience a variety of working practices and systems, as well as work on the accounts for a broad range of businesses. There you go.
Welcome, Adam. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, hello. And no, that was pretty good. Thank you. A good summary.
Brilliant. Okay, so we are going to launch into your story in just a minute. But before we do, a word about our sponsor, Pinnacle Global, a trusted outsourcing partner with well over 150 clients across the UK and Ireland. Pinnacle's CEO, Mayank Pandya, is a chartered accountant based in London, and he has a passion to encourage innovation and excellence in the accounting profession. Pinnacle has offices in the UK and offshore delivery centres across India, employing over 300 high-quality staff. With a strong focus on quality assurance, Pinnacle has helped many UK accounting firms to scale their capacity and operations. So to find out more, please visit www.pinnacleoss.co.uk. You'll also find the link online wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Also supporting the podcast is the Tax Advice Network. Their website enables accountants to choose specific specialist tax advisors for general tax support or for help across any of over 100 areas of tax. It's free to use. You just pay the tax advisor that you choose after agreeing terms. Go take a look at their website called findataxadvisor.online, where you can also register to get their weekly tax tips, which are written especially for general practitioner accountants.
Indeed. So back to our guest. As you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing the discussion around a few key questions.
And I'm
Mark,
going to go
over to you. Yes.
Let's go back to the start, Adam. How and why did you come to set up your own accountancy practice?
So if we go back to January 2020, I was working for a firm in Ashford, where I'm from, and I wasn't the most fulfilled. I was not feeling like I was getting ahead, and we were driving back from the Midlands, where I'm from originally, and me and my wife were going through of like, well, what if we did something totally different? What if I started up on my own? Which was always something I had in my mind that I would do at some point, but never knowing when or how that would actually happen. So then we decided that we would go for it, and we would have 18 months of kind of planning. So June 21, we would have moved in with my in-laws, rented out our house, and kind of started to build a bit of a nest egg, so a bit of a buffer to kind of invest into it, so that it didn't matter if it took a year or so to kind of get off the ground and become profitable, because we would have this to fall back on. So that was January 20, we made the decision. February, kind of put everything in motion. March 20, we moved in with my in-laws. at the start of March, and then at the end of March, I got put on furlough. So then I had about 6 months, it ended up being lounging in the garden, and also kind of thinking, having this kind of bubbling away in the back of my mind. And it was about July time I was invited for a kind of keeping in touch day, whatever you call it, with my now ex-employers, and they said there's probably not going to be something for you to come back to when furlough finishes, so you should make alternative plans. And that just expedited, well, what if I just started now? And so it was October 20. I can remember it was September 20 of getting my practicing certificate finally signed off by ACCA, and it came through just on like the 28th of September, and I started the 1st of October, so it was all very quick, and then took it from there. And the first kind of year or so, I was probably doing about 80% contracting work, so for other accountants who I got connected with on online groups and stuff, who they either didn't have the capacity to do the work, or they had staff move or whatever it was. So I was sort of plugging a gap for other firms until the point that I think my own clients had kind of built up, and then went from there, and eventually didn't need to do the contracting side of work. It was all just having my own clients.
Brilliant.
That is brilliant. Can I just go back, clarify a couple of things? So you were put on furlough. So had you ever been a partner in any of the firms you'd worked in before, or you'd always been an employee?
Always an employee. So I had started off, I'd worked as like a senior accountant for a couple of firms, and then became like a portfolio manager, and then very quickly started managing the office for one firm where there was 4 offices, and I was essentially overseeing, but not actually a partner as such, and then moved firms away from that. And then I suppose in role I had less responsibility, but because of cultural things, and maybe that'll come up later on, the culture of the firm just didn't fit, and it was never going to be a long-term thing.
It sounds like a great background, frankly, because you'd had all the experience of working in different firms, you'd had authority, you'd had responsibility, but you hadn't had the pressure or the politics, perhaps, of being a partner in a multi-partner firm, which I don't know many people who started their own firm and miss the politics and partnership side of things.
No.
Yeah.
No,
so in terms of culture, then, if that was kind of one of the issues, and and a lot of the time it is, I mean, from your perspective, what are you trying to promote now that you've set up yourself? And I know that you've taken on your first person, which I'm dying to talk about as well. But from a culture perspective, kind of what have you learned then? What do you want?
So one of the things that always bugged me at other firms was there will be, so I've got small kids who are now 6 and 3 and were younger back then, obviously, and the way that I was being measured was against other people who were in their early 20s, whereas I was in my early 30s, who, not that they didn't have anything else to do, but their priority was getting ahead and getting progressed, like, and climbing that ladder. Whereas I was far more determined to be a present dad, to be the best that I can be, as all parents do want to be. And I didn't see that leaving the house at 7:30 to be able to do extra hours and leaving at 6:30, I didn't see that all that extra presenteeism that I would be expected was part of it. So then the way that we do things now is there's no timesheet, so people don't, like, the way that we would measure if someone is being productive is if they're doing the work, if clients are satisfied, if the deadlines are being met. So there's no timesheets, which brings a lot off. We don't have set working times, and I know a lot of firms do this, but for me it's really important because I want people to, I want for myself and for the team to be able to be there with their family at the times that matter. So to go to the school play, to be able to do the school pick up and drop off. And the flexibility that we can offer as a profession. You don't have to be working from 9 till 5. You can work whenever you want. And so affording people or trusting people to work, to do the work, and get it done.
So what have you learned then? This is sort of question number 2, I guess, because you've gone from being maybe not in control of your own destiny, and there are lots of us, including me, who are like, right, we'll set up our own business and we'll have loads of time. But then you realise that actually, it takes a lot to have a business and to kind of run it. So what have you learned then along the way for the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it's interesting. It just reminded me, there was a show I can remember watching when I was like a teenager about two couples who wanted to like have this freedom and stuff, and they decided to set up their own business as a B&B, and they ended up just being more stressed and more exhausted because they were just working just as many hours, if not more, and then receiving less. So I'm trying to avoid that. What I've learned along the way is there are kind of peaks and troughs in both the way that kind of the business works in terms of demand that clients kind of place. There's always demand at tax return deadline, the seasonality of self-assessment. The finding clients is a challenge in terms of finding the right clients and being more specific about who you want to work with and what that looks like and how you engage with them. I think all the different firms that I've worked at, and it's maybe 6 or 7, I can't quite remember, whenever I've worked for one, I've always wanted to take something positive away from each of the bosses or managers that I've had. And I think I've managed to do that in terms of the written form that someone would have in terms of how they would lay out their letters, or the overall approach that you would have to client management, or even just doing the accounts work. So not only from working for all those different firms in an employed position, but then when I was contracting, again, I saw a lot of other firms, granted not quite as in-depth or at a senior position, but you can see from the working papers, processes and systems, when setting up my own, different or kind of alternatives. So cherry picking the best from all the different firms.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. And I know that we were saying before recording that some of that came from a conversation that you had with Hayley Meager, who we've had as a guest on this podcast and who's fantastic as well. And I'm sure Mark's the same, which is if you can kind of step back and look at the positive and the negative experiences and take those learnings, I think it can be really, really beneficial.
Absolutely. Anybody who missed it, our interview with Hayley was episode number 40.
Well done.
Last November. Yeah, I can't take the accountant out of me. I know. I can find the details. And I had one particular bad experience quite early in my career. I spent a year at a firm. It was awful. But when I look back on it, I don't focus on problems so much as what I learned and what I could take away from a positive perspective. And I can still remember now. Admittedly, it was back in the days of letters, pre-emails, but it was speed stuns. So a letter would come in with the inviting the firm to pitch, and we would get our responses out the same day. Which would be faster than what everybody else was doing at the time. And that's something I learned from the firm that I otherwise hated the year I spent with. So I can very much relate to that, Adam. What mistakes do you think you've made, and how have you learned from them and corrected them? And was waiting to recruit somebody a mistake, or have you previously recruited people where it's gone wrong?
There was people that I did work with previously, and I think again, looking back on reflection, I probably didn't have clearer kind of systems and processes as to what I was wanting them to do. And so it's sort of inevitable that it didn't work because I didn't tell them clearly or definitively what I wanted to do. So that was one learning, like in terms of getting it a lot clearer as to what the systems are, what the processes are. And that's partly baked into having a good practice management system that kind of facilitates and supports that, but also using it to the best of your abilities in terms of, it's all well and good having a system that will kind of tell you you've got 7 VAT returns to do, but then the next step is then this is how you do them, and all the different steps, or rather the steps that you would want the firm to follow, and then the next step on top of that is then, but this is what this particular client wants and needs, so having it a lot more personable, like for that client. So you've got your, I suppose, 3 tiers to it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about earlier was, about taking on team members. And I know that you were very open and said, you weren't sure, but then you realised it was a great thing. But it's, that awful word, it's a journey, isn't it? Just understanding, taking somebody on, and then understanding how to release information and how to sort of is there anything that people can sort of take away from your experiences so far? Because I think it's such a valuable moment where people struggle. So.
Yeah, and I think so there's the book, The E-Myth, that kind of talks about it a lot, in that we're transitioning from the owner, or sorry, the one who's doing the work, the technician who is doing accounts and handling all of that, to then changing to, I'm the business owner who then has to make sure that the systems are working, that everything is working, so that I can be less removed and be doing less client work. And the flip side is that you want to release and enable your team to do the best possible work that they can. And so everything that you can do that does that, so allowing them to work whenever they want around their kids, so they're not stressed about that, giving them all the best kind of tech in terms of what they've got, their setup, monitors, whatever it is, having everything equipped, having really good system notes on the client, on what you do, having Loom videos explaining how you would do something, and checklists. It all kind of feeds into it. It's a real, using that word, it's a journey to do, because you have to switch off and change priority in terms of what you're doing. And so the person I've recruited, she's the third, including me, on the team, and it was quite easy to bring on the second person, because they just kind of slotted in and were doing like bookkeeping and payroll work that I kind of didn't want to be doing anyway, so that was fine. But when it comes to someone who is releasing kind of you to do different things, it almost felt harder, because you're having to let go of a lot of stuff and change the way that you're operating and your focus. And I'm sort of midway through that cycle now of thinking, yes, I definitely need to take someone on, and then doing it, and then having the seeds of doubt of, oh, actually, no, this was a terrible idea, I shouldn't have done that. But I can't tell anyone, because then they'll think that it's all going wrong, and then they've made a mistake as well. So then thinking, actually, no, this is a real opportunity, it's not calamity, because now I've got all this extra time to go out and meet more people, to go and grow the business like I'm supposed to be. So actually this is a really good thing, and then getting back to kind of that level playing field where I was before they came on. But yes, it is a journey, to use that cliche.
I think that is great. You referenced the E-Myth, which is a book by Michael Gerber. A lot of accountants reference it and seem unaware that he also wrote in 2011 the E-Myth Accountant.
That's the one that I listened to. So I think I bought and lent out to a client the E-Myth, the general one, and listened to that one on Audible. But yes, very good. Yeah.
Even though it might date back to 2011, but the principles are applicable now. And of course, AI is also going to make a huge difference here as well. But let's get back to your story. Any other mistakes that you think you've made? since setting up the practice?
So mistakes,
And of
probably,
course, we're all perfect, aren't we? But hey.
yeah, not mistakes that I've made, but someone else's. I think things like not being clear about the clients that you want to work with, the way that you would do it, kind of compromising a little bit on kind of principles in terms of, I'm not really going to work with this kind of client, or I've got a bad feeling about it, but actually I just want to take this client on. Like, I want to hit my new client numbers for this month, so I'll take it on. And then realizing, soon afterwards, that it wasn't a good idea. But the flip side to that is, I've taken clients on, and within a week or so of them signing the engagement letter, I realized this isn't a good fit. And it's having the conviction to be able, I have got this wrong, and I'm going to take action very promptly. Otherwise, this is going to fester and get worse and get worse. So,
that's really important.
Yeah.
Lots of people will say that, won't they? That it's best to kind of nip it in the bud as soon as you know, rather than sitting on it. I mean, just from your perspective now, and obviously you're learning as you go on, but what makes a good client, and what is it that suddenly you thought, this doesn't fit, you know?
So what makes a good client? So I did a client grading spreadsheet, so where I would be able to give clients a score between 0 and 100 based on different kind of things. Like many things, I kind of did it, put it together, so this is brilliant, I'm going to do this at some point, and then haven't got around to it. But I think the things that were on there that we considered, it was the level of fees, the number of services, if they refer clients to us, do they listen to the advice that we give them, and a bit more kind of fluffy, do we like working with them?
Excellent.
And I didn't put it into practice yet, but kind of considering all those different things, kind of, because there's,
What was the sudden red light for you then? Because, you know, and not naming any names, but you've taken somebody on and then you suddenly think they're not right. What was it that it was probably more of an emotional thing as well, wasn't it? I suspect.
Yeah, it was getting the feeling that they weren't being completely transparent in terms of what was going on and stuff. And I think it came down to something like, they said, well, we've got to be taking out 10 grand a month from this company, and the sales were like 5 or 6, and for them to not see, like, this is a problem, like, you can't do this, and there's just other things that, it just wasn't, concluded it wasn't worth trying to kind of take this on. And actually,
so they were pushing against the flow, basically, weren't they? So
and it's hard to define things like that, but generally you can get a gut instinct.
Funny enough, you remind me, one of my mentoring clients phoned me an extra call a few weeks ago because he'd taken on a new client and he was beginning to have second thoughts, and we talked through the issues and how he would go back and sort of lay the law down politely and in his style, and either the client would play along and, in your terms, go up the scale, or they'd call a halt before they spent any more time and effort on them. And he was very, very happy with the outcome. But it can be quite tough to make that decision by yourself. And he's built his practice up now. He's got a few staff, so he could afford to lose the new client. It's much more challenging when you're still building your client base, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it, because every client, particularly in those first few years where it's all about you, they're buying into you, and so it's a personal thing of like, well, they trust me, so surely I want to work with them. But actually, you don't want to stay in a romantic relationship. You wouldn't stay in one that wasn't actually kind of fulfilling and worthwhile. And it's the same with client relationships. So you have to be a little bit cold and a little bit clinical. And there was one, and another client that I kind of disengaged or chose not to work with, trying to avoid saying I sacked them off. And I was really struggling to write the email as to how do I tell this person. And in the end, I used ChatGPT. You mentioned AI earlier, and I said, "Can you write me a disengagement letter email for this client? Tell them that there's no coming back. I've made my decision, and that I wish them well." And puts it out and takes all the emotion out of it. And I think that's one of the useful things about AI. You can take that out.
Yeah. So, I mean, moving on then, because when it comes to any business, but certainly with accounting and bookkeeping, there is, you choose your clients, but your clients choose you as well. And there has to be that kind of balance, doesn't there? So, I mean, I know it's relatively early days, sort of almost 5 years in, but if you had to sort of put your finger on what makes your practice unique, or the way that you approach things, or your experience, what would you say to that?
It's a good question, because on the one hand, what we as accountants do isn't very unique. There's an end result. You get accounts that are submitted to Companies House hopefully on time, and a tax bill that you would hope is minimised. I think the thing that makes all firms different, makes everyone unique, is the relationship and the way that you approach that, because that people are actually buying. They're buying the relationship and the rapport and the trust that they have in that person. And so I've made a point to the way that I do things is to build a lot of trust and relationally. And again, coming back to the earlier point, when you're building a team, how do you instill those values of you want to be building the best and strongest possible relationship with these people, so that they trust us and we can trust them to work with us as well. So how have I done that? How have I built trust? I would say it's been kind of very, very warm and engaging, taking a genuine interest in the clients and what their goals are, because if we know where they want to get to, it's that much easier to kind of ask the right questions and get them along to that journey. There's a book, I think it's Storybrand by Donald Miller, and he talks about how we as the service provider, we are looking to be the Robin to the client who's Batman. We're their sidekick and helping them and getting them along to where they need to go. And it's a really powerful kind of approach to have, that we're not the main character. The client, every client is the main character in their own story, and we're just helping them to get along and get to that point. And the glory or the success is if they get to where they need to go, then we partner with them, and it's a win-win.
Lovely.
I love that, and I think it's very important. I've heard of Donald Miller before. What's the title of the book?
I think it's Storybrand.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. I've got it here on my desk.
Excellent. And finally, any other secrets to your success in the growth of Swift Accountancy, Adam?
I would say it's being personable. So the way it's having a kind of clear approach to the way that you market. So I've got other people that I know who do have a firm, and they just do construction companies on zero of a certain turnover. I can't remember what it was. And so their marketing approach is very targeted and very exact. They just want people on zero, so they do kind of nationwide marketing campaigns on social media and stuff, and that works for them, and they are successful. Whereas because we are more provincial and working more locally, the way that we network is very, very different. So go to BNI and other local networking groups, part of the chamber, and then that works because you've got this local network. And both of those things are work and are successful ways. It's not that any one is better than the other. It's just everything else kind of building into that has got to be correct. So it'd be pointless for me to have loads of nationwide ad campaigns that are going all over and dealing with someone in giant quotes, when actually I prefer to go and meet someone and look them in the white of the eyes and shake their hands or whatever else. So it's about having all the other things that kind of build up to it in the right order and the right focus.
I mean, I think that's lovely. I mean, at this juncture, you get something out of every guest. You sort of pick up something, and I think from my perspective, you're just very thoughtful. Even from the days where you were thinking about, do you set up on your own, and there's a certain amount of control there, which is a good thing. Thinking through it, thinking through now how you engage kind of your team, and there's a sort of, I think it's really makes it feel very safe. That's what I would say, just from having spoken to you for a little while. But what about you, Mark? What were your
Well, I think the key thing that comes across, Adam, is, as you say, being personable and recognizing that the outputs that you create are the same as the accounts tax bills that any other accountant could produce. So therefore, the focus has to be on you and Swift Accountancy. And I was particularly taken by something that's on your website, where it says that your passion is removing your clients' accounting stress, and that's talking to them, and it's using their what's in their heads. So I think that's likely to work well for you too. Well done. So thank you very much for being on the podcast today. It's been a joy hearing your story and learning from it. I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed that too. How can they find out more about you and Swift Accountancy?
Yes, our website is swiftaccountancy.co.uk, or I can be found on LinkedIn. I don't take myself very seriously on LinkedIn, so I'm often cracking jokes and perhaps not being as professional as perhaps I should be, but it tends to work.
There's no shit about it. Just make sure whatever you do is intended to have a positive impact on the people you want to influence.
And it's consistent.
Yeah.
I
mean,
was going to say,
there are lots of people
say, like that they've appreciated. I saw what you said on that, because there's a lot of ego like on LinkedIn of people presenting like this best thing that they're wildly successful, and a lot of it is just the filter of social media, that it's not all as it seems. That lecture that Gareth Southgate delivered a couple of weeks ago, where he talked about the unhealthy influence of social media, it is there. And so like calling myself the bloke what started it is far better than huge entrepreneur, business investor, and all this stuff that's just twaddle that doesn't actually mean anything. Whereas bloke what started it, in my opinion, is a bit more relatable.
Well, it's clearly you, and it shows a sense of humour before we go any further. So well done.
Yeah.
What about you, Philippa? How can people find out more about you?
Yeah. Well, just to say, first of all, I've had lots of comments. People are listening, and Pavel in particular loves the book Story Brand by Dee Miller. So you've got somebody there who agrees with you. But you can find me on LinkedIn or go on my website, insight101.co.uk. I'm working at the moment with optimization, so looking at your website, understanding how you can connect better with your leads, and also sort of create a theme that is going to create that uniqueness that we all need in a very busy market. So that's what I'm doing. If that sounds interesting to you, then please get in touch. Mark, tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Online everywhere. I'm Bookmark Lee. Even the business card is a bookmark. And if I've learned anything from these interviews, not just today, and from my work over the years, it's that running your own practice isn't easy, and it can be lonely. And if you'd like things to feel easier, better, or more on your terms, that's exactly where I come in. Whether it's better clients, fewer headaches, more profit, a better organisation, whatever it is, I'm always happy to have a chat, no strings attached. Some of those ad hoc conversations lead to regular one-to-one working, or you might decide to join the Soul Practice Club, or we might agree that one chat was all you needed. Up to you. You certainly won't find me pushing. Just helpful and supportive, I like to think. In any event, I'd also encourage you to reach out and connect with both Philippa and me, and Adam, of course, on LinkedIn. And please follow the podcast pages on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Yes, indeed. So sadly, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Adam. It was really fantastic to get you on the podcast finally. Yeah, over to you.
Okay. Now,
Am I talking about? Say that again.
Now, thanks again to the sponsors of the podcast, Pinnacle Global, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website. Let the CEO, Mayank, know you heard about Pinnacle Global on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast.
Ah, yes, you see, I found my place again.
Yeah.
And thanks too to the Tax Advice Network, the easiest way for accountants to reach specialist tax advisors. Remember, there's no charge for using the website. Find a tax advisor online, where you can also access their weekly tax tips, written especially for general practitioner accountants.
And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the love online, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and let us have your feedback too. All helps to broaden the reach of the podcast. And do please contact either Philip or me if you'd like to be interviewed on a future podcast. Middle of April, we have a date. Otherwise, we're towards the back end of June now. Or if there's someone you'd like to recommend that we interview.
Yeah. So thank you, Mark. And again, thanks to our wonderful guest, Adam. Until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life, goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.